Bomberman, a series that sure is. For 40 years, the franchise has persisted as one of the most iconic party multiplayer games ever, pitting you and your friends in big, block-filled mazes and tasking you with blowing them to smithereens. I remember loving this guy when I was really young. We only ever owned one Bomberman game here, but for whatever reason, something about that guy in his dumbass suit spoke to me. I remember pouring a weird amount of time into both the Bomberman we had and ones I found on emulation websites online. Just playing games against the CPU, kicking bombs around, all because I liked watching things explode. And I mean, who wouldn't when you're 6, right? But you know, it's strange. For a franchise that's over 40 years old that I've heard plenty about from gaming diehards, that released multiple games a year from 1990 all the way to 2010, I always assumed that it was one that rivaled the likes of Pac-Man as a sort of arcade classic franchise. I loved the Bomberman games I played as a kid. I remember when Smash 4 and Ultimate's hype cycles were going strong and seeing a strong contingent of people pounding the table for the guy. And when the Nintendo Switch released with one of like 3 games being Super Bomberman R, I saw people singing that game's praises. That game was the best-selling Bomberman ever, with 2 million copies. Its sequel didn't do so hot. This honestly sent me into a bit of a spiral. Like, it just feels wrong. It's like finding out your dad doesn't sleep on the couch in the basement for the lumbar support. I hear you LARPing motherfuckers and your Bomberman hero music in your goddamn video essays. There's no way you bastards have played Bomberman Max Blue Champion. Neither have I, but the point is, in doing my little history refresher, I was floored by how much Bomberman there was that actually flew under the radar. Not every franchise needs to make 1 million sales per game to be deemed a success, I recognize that, but goddamn, there are so many of these games that never even cracked the reported 100K, including my little slice of the Bomberman pie. Bomberman Jetters first started life as a manga and anime series in 2002, focusing on Bomberman, known in the series as White Bomber, taking on his brother's mantle as a part of an intergalactic police force known as the Jetters. He works alongside the scientist Dr. Ryan, Gongu the robot, Birdie the take a wild guess, Bongo the please keep guessing actually, I really don't know this time, and his leader Shout. They work to thwart the Hige Hige gang as they try to steal all manner of items. It never received a localization in the States, and admittedly I didn't take enough time to watch the whole series in preparation for this, but it seems charming enough. Terribly preserved though, you really gotta go digging to find anything of this show. But that all being said, while the game itself is based on the Jetters anime, I think I could confidently say you don't really need that background. Jetters as a game barely rises to the threat of having a story anyway. The plot is as follows. The Hige Hige clan, led by scientist Dr. Mikado and beefcake wrestling parody Mujo, have cooked up a brilliant plan to put a stop to the Jetters once and for all. They're gonna take their big spaceship, the Dark Star, and just slam it into Planet Bomber, killing everyone. What the fuck is the goal here? The Jetters reasonably respond by sending White Bomber out ahead to attempt to shut off the engines powering the Dark Star before everyone dies. But he's not alone on the journey, as the cyborg Max appears in a ship of his own, vowing to team up with Bomberman for the adventure. From there, the two work their way from world to world, clearing each stage, fighting other bombers that we'll touch on more in a bit, and taking out robots modeled after various yokai in order to shut off each generator, before eventually taking the fight straight to Mujo and the evil doctor. Kinda. I mean, you do stop the Dark Star, but the credits feature Bomberman flying home while Mujo and Dr. Mikado do Looney Tunes bits where they try to hit his ship but mostly just whack each other around instead. The plot is largely in service of giving you a reason why you're in any of these levels, but beyond that I wouldn't say it rises to the level of being serviceable as an episode of the anime, let alone a whole game. And on the note of the anime, I just want to touch on 2 subjects really quick. First off, the characters here, well, I want to say they barely act like they do in the show, but nobody really acts like much of anything here. Most of the characters don't have much characterization here besides the most basic traits possible. Bomberman is plucky and excited, Dr. Ein is wise, Bongo loves sniffing people, and Shout,
"You did it! Hurry and stop the engine by pressing the switch."
Second, this dub is tremendously awful. As I mentioned a little bit, the anime was never dubbed. It's only in Japanese, so when they decided to take a crack at bringing this game over to the US 2 years after its release, they needed to find an entire voice cast to do the bare minimum. Initially, I thought it was probably done by 4Kids. It would have been the right time frame as a 2004 release of a children's anime. Bongo was giving me shades of Dan Green, and the Flame Bomber had some Sean Schemmel to his voice, but come the credits and yeah, no, I don't know any of these names, hang on. Okay, so a quick bit of research showed me that these guys were kinda just plucked off the street. Basically, anyone who did voice work here had almost zero other roles to speak of, outside of them being brought on to do, of all things, King of Fighters Maximum Impact 2. Bomberman was Mai Shiranui. There's a joke in here somewhere about Mai's boobs being explosive, but I should have some restraint. I won't disparage this cast too much, given for most of them this was seemingly their first role and also was 22 years ago. I think all of them have long since moved on with their lives, but it really does sound like everyone is reading their lines off the page for the first time ever and then weren't allowed a second take. Except for maybe Dr. Ein, I guess I can give him a pass. But Shout especially, I mean, my god.
It's a maze! Move on and don't get lost! It looks like this is also a laboratory. Be careful not to get lost. Right, Bomber? Max? I have no more advice to give you. Good luck to both of you.
It's funny, but I'm always impressed by going back to early 2000s games and seeing how often they present you with a wheel ranging from phenomenal dubbing to middle school play. And everyone here is really gunning to get the role of Tree number 2. That's the only big problem I've got with the way this game sounds though. Otherwise, I think in terms of both visuals and music, the game is still pretty nice. It uses big sharp outlines and bright popping colors that give a nice cartoony style to the game and still look pretty nice. Enemies do a good job matching their worlds too, especially the Higa Hige bandits who sometimes change on a level-to-level basis to match the environment they found themselves in, whether that be a ninja or a farmer or even an office worker. And the soundtrack is pretty solid too. Not a lot of must-listens here, but tracks like Hige Heaven and the first one in Green World are both songs that rival the likes of Bomberman Heroes score and are well worth your time if you're a fan of the franchise. Alright, I've said my piece about the story and the presentation. Let's dive into the gameplay proper. Bomberman Jetters is an action puzzle game that sees you exploring all sorts of 3D environments searching for the exit of the stage. To do this, you'll battle enemies and use your bombs to clear obstacles and activate switches that will allow you to progress further into the level. These bombs can be thrown, kicked, or even charged into stronger versions, all of which are used at different points to handle certain tasks. I think the first couple levels of the game do a pretty good job of introducing you to these concepts, as you'll have to kick bombs into enemy spawning buildings, toss bombs across gaps you can't access otherwise in order to create bridges, and charge up your bombs in order to move things like this really big boulder. Your bombs can also be upgraded in various ways. Firstly, by blowing up the world's designated item containers, you can get boost to the number of bombs you can place and the blast radius of said bombs, alongside improvements to your ground speed. These are littered everywhere, so it doesn't take very long to get maxed out on all three, but it does feel very nice being able to mow through everything while you gallop around, avoiding the wrath of whatever enemies you come across. You'll also get access to elemental bombs after finding certain items throughout the game's worlds, and then taking them to get fused by Gongu, who I really don't want to talk about.
This is the bomb mud device. This is where new bombs can be created by combining the fire bomb with bomb mud items.
These bombs function a little differently to standard fire bombs. You can only ever place one of these at a time no matter how many bomb upgrades you got, but as a trade-off each comes with special properties that change their attacks. Hurricane bombs will explode and then shoot a tornado in the direction you throw them, killing any enemies that get in contact with it. Aqua bombs shoot little homing bubbles, ice bombs shoot up a pillar of ice that's good for hitting aerial foes, and thunder bombs hit enemies over a wider range. I mean, there's only so many things a bomb can do, I suppose. It's cool to utilize these in combat, especially the hurricane bomb since it just gives you so much opportunity to wipe out enemies in levels that have tight hallways, but I won't lie, I did not get much out of these. For starters, they really aren't all that mandatory. The game doesn't just hand these out to you. You'll have to find both the synthesis item and the bomb fusion location in a stage in order to get them, and you can pretty easily skip collecting these altogether. These elements aren't really used for any puzzles either, which feels like a gigantic missed opportunity. They do extra damage against bosses, but that's about the most reason I have to bust these out. Besides that, I stuck with fire bombs because the versatility of placing down 5 of those is just hard to match during most levels. By the way, you might have noticed if you were paying any attention to the thing that you're staring at that there's an elephant in the room that I haven't addressed. And a shark, a dragon, T-Rex, bootleg Zapdos. Okay, yeah, so I kinda got a whole zoo to talk about. These are the other biggest gameplay element I've yet to address, Carabombs. You'll find these throughout the game, and each one has a certain attribute that'll either help you in traversal or combat. Sharkin will let you cross bodies of water, Pox handles tight ropes, Tough Guy, yes that's his real name, makes you throw bombs further and higher, and all of them can be upgraded up to 3 levels by feeding them fruit littered in each area that improve their skills. It's another mechanic that doesn't quite meet its potential, okay. So listen, I think the idea here works really well on paper. I like that you can upgrade your kit in a variety of ways by having a little animal buddy with you. My issue is that some of these are either worthless or way too situational. For every tough guy, there's a Batra, whose ability is to let you lay a line of bombs? I don't even get the idea for this one, because you could just plant bombs rapidly anyway by repeatedly tapping A. Look at that, I just did Batra's job for it. I'm a genius. Then there's ones like Duraco, who level up your bomb stats, but that does nothing if you're already at 5 in each of them. Or Sparkin, who will give your bombs a stunning effect in water, but this doesn't even always work from what I found. I also don't really love how traversal Kara-bombs are handled. You can only have one Kara-bomb active at a time, and that includes for moving around. So if you're in a stage where you need, say, Pommy Dragon and Pox, you have to spend time either menuing between Kara-bomb or mashing X to cycle through all of them, and it drags the pace down a lot. I understand this is probably a byproduct of them needing to be able to level up, and thus needing to be active in some capacity, but personally, I would have opted to instead have movement-based Kara-bombs activate in their context-sensitive areas and essentially force themselves into the active slot until their segments are over. That would prevent so much pausing I had to do during gameplay, and it's just one of those things I wish were handled a bit differently. Bomberman Jetters in general operates in this zone of, I really think this sounds cool, but why is it done like this? I've already touched on the bomb types and the Kara-bombs, but there's one other thing here that you might have even forgotten I mentioned, Max. This isn't just a game where you play as Bomberman, as at any time during gameplay you can swap to Max, who plays quite similarly but has access to a charge move known as the Hyperplasma Bomb. In essence, it's a screen nuke, and it's used to open like 6 doors across the entire game, I think? Not really a frequent occurrence, but given that this guy trivializes combat, you might wonder why I haven't even mentioned him in gameplay to this point. They hate this guy. The game does not want you to use Max at all. Sick-ass design be damned, Max is borderline unusable for many stages in Bomberman Jetters for one back-breaking reason. He can't use Kara-bombs. This decision is baffling, because as we've discussed previously, there are a lot of times where you need to use one of these freaks to progress, and Max just can't do that. At that point, I was basically jamming a square peg in a round hole, trying to find combat-centric stages where I could switch to Max to wipe out enemies so he wasn't relegated to door bitch, but god damn it, he was the dooriest bitch around. I love how Max looks, and I remember desperately trying to use him as a kid too, but Kara-bombs are just too essential to the level design for him to ever be more than situationally helpful. You might reasonably think from my bemoaning of all this game's shortcomings that I had a miserable time playing Jetters, and you'd be wrong. It has huge issues with missing its potential, but I was having fun with the game overall, and I think a lot of that is because of the levels. You'll explore a lot of varied environments, ranging from icy beaches, labyrinthine laboratories, pleasant gardens, to Japanese hot spring spas over an active volcano. For all of its other faults, the game never feels too generic in how it handles the locations you visit, which I was shocked by. Like, you see that the game has a green world and a hot world, and you go in expecting the worst, but the level designers genuinely did their best to create stages that keep your interest as you keep exploring, and I think that's impressive as hell. Hot World in particular was a highlight to me. I already mentioned the hot spring level, but it also has stages where you explore an entire village and a resort built on top of that active volcano, before sending you inside the resort to wipe out the Higa Higa forces. Things never got stale to me despite how easily they could have, and even with the pacing issues and pointlessness of some mechanics, I can earnestly say I was never bored. Each world also features 2 bosses, one against another bomber and one against one of Dr. Mikado's yokai robots. Starting with the bomber fights, I actually really liked these for the most part. Each one has a distinct battlefield and attack patterns that kept me on my toes as I played, and forced me to think on the fly about when best to go in to throw bombs at them. All of them also look super sick, especially the Flamin' Grand Bomber. As for the yokai fights, yeah, they happen alright. These take place in generally larger arenas, and it's either really easy to dodge their attacks or otherwise just tank them while you hit them with whatever bomb they're weak to, which the game spells out for no good reason. Outside of this one with the bird that's pretty annoying because your opportunities to attack are few and far between, there's just not much to say about any of them. I don't really hate them, but they're not interesting at all. The game kinda recognizes this too, to be fair, since in order to fight the true final boss against Mujo and Dr. Mikado, you have to earn all 10 lightning cards from the bomber boss fights, which requires beating them all under 3 minutes and hitting them with a certain type of elemental bomb. The latter ones are all pretty easy to get, and the only time limit one I had trouble with was the Dark Force Bomber. I had to go and grind up the Kara bomb you get from beating it in order to actually clear it that fast, but even that didn't take particularly long, and I found sending remote-controlled bombs at the dickhead pretty fun, honestly. And now that I have all that handled, the true final boss is... alright. You don't get an animated cutscene for this one, oddly enough. Mujo shows up and gets demolished before Dr. Mikado arrives trying to barrage barrage you with attacks from different parts of his ship, and you have to toss charged elemental bombs into the openings he leaves in order to finish him off. It's not bad, and I did almost die to the Doctor, but upon wiping him out, you get the same exact ending as you did against the fake final boss against this golden deer. Like, literally 1 for 1. Nothing has changed here. This one doesn't even make sense, though, because you're already on Planet Bomber to fight them. So did Bomberman then hop in his spaceship to run a quick vaudeville act with Mujo and Mikado? You might wonder why this doesn't bother me more, but honestly, with this game kinda just missing the mark in silly ways up to this point, it mostly feels on brand for Bomberman Jetters to end like that. And that's it for story mode. With that being said, there is a battle mode here too. You get access to a full classic Bomberman experience where up to 4 players can pick from their character of choice and just start blasting away. And yeah, this still rules. I don't think that it's really an incentive to go pick this game up, seeing as you can get a multiplayer Bomberman fix for much cheaper nowadays, but Bomberman is like pizza. I'm gonna enjoy it regardless. And that's my overall conclusion of Bomberman Jetters. I enjoyed it regardless. It's a game that just feels lacking in a lot of ways, but still kept me engaged throughout. I think the skeleton of what's here is good, and I think a lot of what it sets out to do is really promising, but it never quite gets enough meat on the bone to fully form into what it was meant to. I'm not sure if it would have really benefited from more time in the oven. I don't really feel like the game comes across as rushed for the most part, but it certainly feels like the scope of the mechanics was grander than the scope of the game, if that makes any sense. I would totally recommend Bomberman Generation. For all of you not in the know, which my guess at the moment is everyone, Jetters, while based on the anime, is technically also considered a sequel to a game called Bomberman Generation, which is, in many ways, just a better Jetters. It's also odd because these games came out 6 months apart. I'm not sure what the hell that was about, but they were developed by different teams and follow largely similar structures. The biggest difference to me is that Generation's Cara bombs are also used in little battle minigames that are absent in Jetters, and in general seem to have more interesting level design on the whole, which given that I like Jetters' level design as is, hell yeah. I would have covered this game first, but I didn't even know it existed before researching, and I already had Jetters ready to go. Maybe I'll take a look at that in its own video down the road, but for now, hey, is that a bomb?